I'm Freeman Allen, and these dialogues, sustainability dialogues, are sponsored by Sustainable Claremont, which is a community organization that works closely with the city. And these lecture facilities are made possible for us because the programs are co-sponsored by Pomona College, and we're very grateful for that. This evening we have as speakers Tom Hillowell and Tom Blakeney, both with a physics background and both electric car enthusiasts. And I can hardly wait to hear what they have to tell us. And well, maybe we ought to just get started. Is Tom, which Tom will start? Tom Hillowell, here you are.
Freeman can hardly wait to see what we have to say, and that's the same for me. Do any of you drive electric cars, all electric cars? What kind do you have?
Kia.
Kia, great.
It's right up there.
Any others? All right. Tom Blakeney drives a Model S Tesla. You notice it's very short compared with my car, which is a Chevy Bolt. Something about angle and perspective, I think. Anyway, he's driven electric cars for a long time. I leased my car a year ago, last February. So I've had it about 12 months now, 13 months perhaps. We have a special treat tonight. If we have a Kia driver and a Tesla driver and a Bolt driver, we're going to do a drag race up Indian Hill. Because I don't know which is the most acceleration, but Tesla will win. Okay, well, I want to check that for myself. So you're all welcome to come at 8:45 right after this presentation out in Indian Hill. We've got clearance from the police department. They're going to look after all the cross streets and make sure that people and cars and dogs and so on don't cross. At least they hope so. And it'll all be timed by Mrs. Robinson's 5th grade class at Sycamore School. They have cell phones and stopwatches and so on. I think it'll take about 30 seconds. I'm not sure. Anyway, thank you for coming. We had originally, Tom Blakeney and I had originally planned to split the hour evenly between us and then have a half hour for discussion and questions at the end. But Freeman had the novel idea that perhaps we should apportion the time based on how much we know about the subject. And in a weak moment, I agreed to that. And so my time is actually up. And so let me introduce Tom Blakeney, who really knows a thing or two about electric cars, and will answer all your questions. Thank you.
So I have started in 2011 with the Leaf, and I drove that for 3.5 years, and for various reasons that I will get into, I gave it up. And I'm very grateful I could afford to move up to the Tesla Model S, which was the only model available at the time. The Model 3 is the one that's going to be more affordable, and we'll be talking about that quite a bit, because it's a good competitor to the Bolt that Tom has just mentioned. So, my outline, I'm going to talk about the benefits of why we should be driving electric, choices and the progress that has been made in range since 2011, the charging, how, when, and where, and the end of range anxiety. And that's a real key of this talk, because the dealers don't tell you about charging. And the whole push is what you do when your car runs out of whatever capacity it came with in the battery. And so that's public charging, and so there's a lot of details to that. And then I will compare the Leaf and the Bolt and the Tesla Model 3 briefly, because those are of so much interest. And I'll finish up with how to start if you want to be partially electric. and we'll have questions, but then there's a section on carbon footprints. It's real important, but I'll let us have some questions before we get into that. And then we'll finish up in the question period with some testimonials. And on the graph on the right is the state keeps track of all the rebates. You get $2,500 back for every car that's registered as an electric vehicle, any kind of electric vehicle, whether it is purchased or leased. And the blue is the plug-in versions, and the green are the all-electric versions. And you'll see that there's more green than blue. That actually is not a good thing, really, because the plug-in electrics are virtually no marginal cost to a hybrid without the plug, if it's available. And so it's just a question that the dealers don't tell you about that option, that there aren't more of them. That's my opinion. Or there could be just uncertainty about electricity in general, but that's why we're having this talk. So the prime reason for driving electric, in my opinion, is to reduce your carbon footprint. There are other benefits I will get into, but you really need to be motivated, and that's what this audience is, motivated. And so I claim that mitigating global warming is not going to be easy and it's not going to be completely free. But there is a growth of wind power and solar and a decline of coal, and those are leading to a reduced carbon footprint for the generation of electric power. And in 2016, that carbon footprint dropped below the carbon footprint for transportation. So transportation is now the larger problem. And so that motivates shifting at least some of our transportation to electric. We can't shift airplanes to electric. We can't really ship long-haul trucks to electric or ships to electric, but we can do personal cars. I will have more on carbon footprint later. Many folks seem to be waiting for electric vehicles to be the same range, the same cost, and the same convenience. And I'm here to tell you that may never happen. But we're getting close enough to where you can afford to make some steps. A hybrid without a plug is good, but it is no longer good enough, is my claim. The good news is with the latest electric vehicle technology, there are more options for driving electric, perhaps not 100%, and you need to choose a mixture that works for your driving profile, and that's what we'll get into. But the possibilities are more affordable, less inconvenience, and more miles without gas, and you are driving without guilt. It requires some being informed, some planning, and really a different mindset. And the people that are most resistant seem to just have trouble with the mindset. And I will appreciate your help in this discussion as to where the difficulties are. But in any case, there's some trade-off available between cost and convenience. You can go with a cheaper choice and more inconvenience, or you can go for a Tesla, which is not very inconvenient at all, as I will show. So, major EV benefits: safer, faster emergency stops. Your all-electric cars and even hybrids without a plug have the ability to move power from back into the battery as you're slowing down. Just the conservation of energy means if you're taking kinetic energy out of the vehicle, you can put it back in the battery and not waste it on heating up your brakes. And with the Tesla, the regeneration is very powerful. But even for any car in stop-and-go driving, it's great. So that's why hybrids do well in stop-and-go driving. When I was in Colorado in the Tesla, there's a long grade over Wolf Creek Pass. It's 4 lanes, 35 miles an hour, but it's a 9% grade. I came down that whole road without using the brake once, at a steady 35 miles an hour, just by controlling how much pressure I had on the throttle, never touching the brake. If I needed to stop, I would have had to use the brake. There's powerful brakes in the car, but I didn't need that. So it's the safety aspect is you see an emergency, your foot is leaving the accelerator, it's moving to the brake, the car is already slowing down as soon as you have your foot off the accelerator. And you notice that all the time. And electricity is safer than gasoline. Now this is hard for some people to accept. The charge cable here, and every Tesla comes with this kind of cable. There's no energy, the other end is plugged into your power source. There's no power in that cable until the car detects that there's a cable, and the cable that detects that there's a car, and then the power is applied. So it's safer than your wall outlet, because the wall outlet always has power in it. There are no fumes. You can run air conditioning with the car parked in the garage if you want. I know someone who they actually bought my Leaf, and she has her daughter in dance class, and she'll sit out in the hot weather in the summer in her air-conditioned car parked and not worry about the fumes, because there aren't any. So the car can also save time, and most people think charging electric vehicles is a lot of inconvenience because they've heard it takes 5 hours to charge. Well, I will show you a chart. Sometimes it does take 5 hours to charge. But if you plan it right, it doesn't waste any time at all. And so there's a bunch of conveniences you get. You have the diamond lane sticker. And this is prime for some people who need to get home in rush hour on their schedule. And so that allows you to drive in that lane with a single driver. That privilege is no longer forever. It's good for 4 years. My sticker will expire at the end of this year. I need to buy another electric car. You save the time from no trips to the gas station. How many of your friends go to Costco and it takes 15 minutes to get there and 15 minutes to get home and 20 minutes waiting in line, and you've shot almost of an hour? Now maybe you get some shopping done too. But when you're plugging in your garage, it's 15 seconds to plug in at night, 15 seconds to unplug in the morning. Even if you do that every day, and a lot of people don't, like Tom doesn't have to charge his car every day because he doesn't drive a lot, that's only 15 minutes a month for charging the car if you're just using what's in the garage. And if your car is all electric, you have very reduced maintenance. And there's no oil changes, no spark plugs, no timing belt, no transmission. Compare that to a conventional car that might have a 6-speed transmission or even an 8-speed these days. And my friend Dory drove 60,000 miles in her Leaf before her one and only service at the Nissan dealer. And the Nissan dealer was angry that she'd waited so long, but he couldn't find anything wrong. And you have instant torque, quiet power, and it's fun to drive. So you also save money. You have your savings on the purchase. You get a $7,500 federal tax credit, and that fortunately was preserved in the new tax law. But there's a limit of each brand. There's a limit for Chevrolet, for the Bolt and the Volt, and there's a limit for Tesla. It's 200,000 vehicles delivered within the continental United States. Tesla is delivered like 140,000 cars within the US, but is delivered more than 200,000 cars because they have a lot of international sales. When they get to 200,000 domestic, then the federal tax credit starts to phase out. You get it partial for another quarter and so on. So if you want a Bolt, you should get one now. And the same with a Tesla if you really want a Tesla. So the federal state rebate, the California state rebate, leasers are eligible as well as purchasers, and the check is normally mailed to you, not the dealer. But there are some new income tax caps, so it's a fairly involved application process. So you have to give them some information. And Edison now has a credit of $450, and the neat thing about that is everybody gets it, and when you sell the car, the next owner gets it too. Every time the car changes ownership, another $450. So your used car has more value. Savings on driving. There's a new Edison tariff that I'll talk about in the carbon footprint, and even without solar, you'll be able to charge at night for 12 cents a kilowatt hour. Typically get 3 or 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So you're talking 3 or 4 cents per mile of driving. That's pretty cheap. You can't beat that with gas. Even a new Prius can get, low, but I don't think they can get that low. And if you do have solar PV, there's a way where the marginal cost of driving your car a mile is 0. And I will explain that if we have time. And with no oil changes, your only real mileage expense is tire wear. There's one more benefit I like to show, and that is this beautiful motor. And a internal combustion engine has zillions of parts. This one has one part, one moving part. So the motor should last for a long time. So let's look at the 3 classes of electric vehicles to drill down on how to choose a vehicle. And I've sort of named them myself. P for plug-in hybrid, L for limited range, all electric, and F for full range, all electric. And on the left, I have a table of the national EV sales, major models for 2017. And you see the first 5 are all over 20,000 units for the year. And Tesla Model S, Chevrolet Bolt, Model X, Toyota Prius Prime, which is doing really well. And the Chevrolet Volt is doing about the same. Nissan Leaf has fallen off. It's no longer doing that well, and I will explain why. There are a few other plug-in hybrids down in this corner here that I don't know much about, but they're larger. Some of those cars are larger. And in the middle, I say, you really want to look at your driving profile and say, how many miles do you drive in local errands, commuting, across town, and road trips? And how much of that can be utilized for the vehicle you're buying or leasing? So let's look at the plug-in hybrids and the progress in increased range. And Chevrolet Volt is really the prominent plug-in hybrid, the best. It used to get 35 miles all electric. Now it's 55 miles in 2016. And if you're on the road, you're driving more than that 55 miles a day, of course. But if you charge at a motel every night, you got that 15 seconds at night and 15 seconds in the morning, and you're good to go. You have another 55 miles. So you're saving gas, you're saving carbon, driving your Volt no matter how far you go. But you have gasoline, so you go as far as you would normally go. And then the 2013 Ford Energy, they have 21 miles electric, which is a little bit for that around town, those errands. And then you have the Toyota Prius Prime, about the same. And that's a big improvement because the old version only did 11 miles. And we just had another electric vehicle driver walk in, and thank you, Nora. And here is a 2018, well, I don't have a picture of the Sonata, and I don't know much about that one. So progress in full range electrics, we have the Tesla Model X. The batteries increased from 85 to 90 and now 100 kilowatt hours. It can do almost 300 miles. It can seat up to 7 people. You can buy it in different seating arrangements. It has towing capacity. It has these awesome doors. It's too much of a car for me. I don't have a family. But you have a family, you have lots of friends. The Chevrolet Bolt is big improvement over the Leaf. It's 2.5 times the range of the 2011 Leaf for about 10% higher price. And the Tesla Model 3 has 320 miles of range in the configuration they're selling right now. And so you're getting greater range than the Model X because it's a smaller, lighter car for half the price. So the limited all-electrics, in Los Angeles, they can't get to one side of the metropolitan area and back in one day without charging. So I argued with a BMW manager before they were introducing the i3, which is the one on top, that the 90 miles of range he was offering was not going to cut it in Los Angeles. But it's more powerful. Now it goes up to 115 miles, and it's more sporty than the Leaf. And the Leaf has got its range gradually. We've been asking for more and more range. It's now up to 140 miles in the new 2018 model. So I want to spend some time on this chart. Everybody wants to know how long to take to charge, and the answer is it depends. And it depends on the battery power, which is really a function of both the voltage and the current. And so I've shown a bunch of cars across the top, from the Leaf to the Tesla Model X and S. And down the side, I have a power level. So let's go through. There's 3 main levels, 1, 2, and 3, and then I've split the 2 and 3 up a little bit. So notice the first level, and that's what Tom uses for his Bolt. He's getting 4 miles per hour that he's plugged in. If he wants to fill all the way up from empty, I don't know exactly what he's taking, but I'm estimating 55 hours.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah. But I never let it get that low.
Yeah, he never lets it get that low. So that's more than 2 days. So he doesn't have to go a full drive every day because he's retired. So that's why it works for him. You know, if he would spring for a little more money, he could buy my extra charger and put it in his garage, get an electrician to wire it up, and then he would do a lot better because now he could move to level 2 and he could get 18 miles per hour of charge. So he could fill up all night in one night. But there's beyond, also in level 2, there's the RV park option. So this cable here that comes with every Tesla, you get a different adapter. This adapter here will work in outlets in an RV park, which have 220 volts and 40 amps. So no other car comes with they all come with a cable, but the cable only works at 120 volts. Only Tesla has the higher capacity cable. And that's not a charger, it's just a cable with safety features in it so that the cable is not energized until it knows it's plugging into a car. So the next category is high power wall connector, HPWC. Tesla calls that the destination charger. Any motel, and let's see if I go to the next chart, this here's what I have in my garage. Any motel that asks for it will get a free one of these. I had to pay good money for it. And they do that because they want to promote their cars. And I've tried to get motels to install them, and some of them have them, and most of them don't. If we go back to the table, we also have Chatamo, let's see, we have our, let's try this. Level 3, we have Chatamo and Supercharger, and these bypass the charger in the car and connect directly to the battery. And they force power into the battery at the voltage the battery is at, which is typically 350 to 400 volts. So those are much more sophisticated machines. They can cost $20,000, $50,000 a piece. And whereas that other thing was a few $100s. But look at the power levels. You can get up to, there's a digit here. This should be 120, not right there. So 120 kilowatts versus 1.4, 100 times. So you can get up to 300 plus miles per hour of charge. So I say I can get a good charge for a Model S in 0.7 hours. And a lot of times it's less than that. The Bolt, if you're using CCS, and there was some confusion. I'm angry at Tom's dealer. They never told him that whether his car did or did not have the fast charge option. It does. And they didn't apparently charge him extra for it. But they never told him about it. So he told me he didn't have it. So we'll see what that can do for you. So, well, let's see. Let's go back. On the right is the other way of charging that's good at work. So the example in the picture is AQMD and Diamond Bar, and they have 50 plugs. They've had to expand their plugs more and more. They don't give any direct subsidy to their employees, but because their mission is environmental, the employees are motivated, and so they get the cars themselves, and then AQMD pays for the charging. And the electricity is cheap. Harvey Mudd told me, we put in a charger without a meter on it, and it is unlimited financial liability. Bullshit. A Tesla plugged in 24 hours a day, every day, is not going to break Harvey Mudd. Charging on the road, that's the key thing. That's where you want public charging. And so on the left, on the top, I show an example where I use this special adapter that I paid extra for. And so I can plug into the same unit that would power Tom's Bolt. And that works pretty well. And on the bottom, I show a Supercharger site. This happened to be in Idaho Falls. And there are 8 stalls charging. And my car is the red one in the middle between the two ladies. And there's 2 cars just visible to the right. They're waiting in line. I've charged at 78 different Supercharger stations in 4.5 years. And this is only the second time I've had to wait to plug in. And since there's 40 minutes per charge, and there's 8 of them, there's a new car arriving every 5 minutes and leaving every 5 minutes. So it's no big deal, and we just saw an Eclipse, so we had things to chat about. So here's the Eclipse, and here is roughly the route I took. My route was a little more complicated than this, but I set up the car. So the car, this is a snapshot from the car's display, and it's showing up here along the edge here is how many minutes it's expecting me to need at each of the stations. So it's predicting all that based on the elevation profile along the route. And so it's pretty nice. And I guess that's all I need to say on that. So I'm claiming this is an end-of-range anxiety. Over on the right, there's more detail you can show in the car. Here I've just plotted a route up to, was Yermo or Barstow. And you have to go over the Colon Pass and see this little dip down there? That's where the power, where the power in the battery was dropping faster because I was going uphill. So it's predicting all that and how much I would have when I get to the destination. And I can't read how many percent that is, but it was plenty. So over on the left, this is a new display, a feature that was added a year after I bought the car. Well, this feature was added a year after I bought. This was 2 years after I bought the car. And this is the LA area, and each of these bars is showing you how busy that station is. The red bars are cars that are actually charging at that moment. That's a pretty cool feature. So you can pass up a station that's busy for another nearby station that's not busy. So how do you extend your range locally? So on this one, I've used Plugshare. Dealers are clueless. They never tell you about Plugshare. Plugshare is an app. It's free. And you set filters for what's available in your area, and you can drill down and see how big, then reports. Is it broken? You know, how good is the eating around there? Whatever. So the green ones are standard that everybody can use. And the orange ones are these level 3. But I've set it here for just what Tom needs for his car. So every one of these orange ones, he could charge in 1 hour, he could fill his battery completely up versus 50 hours. And he wouldn't need to fill up, he just needs enough to get home. So it would be less than an hour. And when I started in 2012, just before I got my Tesla, there was only one orange in this map. That's how much improvement there's been. Here's a Tesla nationwide network, okay? And the blue guys, blue and orange, are where they're building new ones. Along here, here's one on the East Coast. And notice all the major highways are now covered. There was a certain point where Elon had his first coast-to-coast route, and then he drove it himself. And I stayed at a motel in Colorado that had one of those wall chargers, and I said, "Why do you have it?" And they said, "Well, because Elon was here." And he flew a team in to install it before he got there. And so there was only one route. Now there's all these routes. But, you know, if you're in the middle of here or somewhere, there's limits to what the network can do, but it's pretty good. So I mentioned in that chart that each station, each of those dots can have up to 40 stalls. This is a new one in Riverside, just been open a couple of months. I was the first one to charge here, and there's 22 or something. Some of them aren't in view here. It's 21. And so that's what it looks like. It's a lot. I think they must have spent $500,000 to $1 million on this installation. The one in Victoria Gardens at one point was the largest in the world. It only has 12. So that's how much growth there's been. So here is the same charger that would work in a Bolt, this on a national scale. So we see we've got complete coverage up the West Coast, complete coverage up the East Coast, but we can't quite get coast to coast yet. They've had a huge improvement on this in only 1 year. Chevrolet, who builds the Bolt, they have the chairman, the lady, Mary Barrera, whatever her name is, she's announced that she's not spending a dime on this. Tesla spent all their own money on their network. Chevrolet spends zero. But BMW and VW and other people that use this standard are putting up some money. And they charge money when you plug into these. I get lifetime free use on my car, but the Model 3 does not come with lifetime use. So the Tesla chargers network in the local area, and how we're doing? Well, the gray guy, so we have the red is the operating ones. So here's Victoria Gardens. Here's the one at Riverside right there. Here's one that just opened at Lake Elsinore. Here's one, I've driven to Palm Springs a couple times, so I've used these out here. And then the light gray are planned ones. There's a lot of plans. Elon has a lot of plans. We don't know that they all will come to fruition. That's a heck of a lot. But the dark ones are real ones that are destination chargers. So these are all motels. Look at Palm Springs. There's all kinds of motels out there because they have a lot of money out there. And so, you know, you have your choice. So that's pretty good. So comparing the Leaf to the Bolt to the Tesla Model 3. So here, I basically, the key positives for the Leaf, it has very low maintenance. And the 2018 has longer range. The big advantage to the Bolt is it can be delivered now. And they build that on an assembly line mixed in with conventional cars. So if demand suddenly jumps, they can ramp up production quite quickly. Unlike Tesla, it's only making one kind of car and one kind of assembly line. And so it has a really good range. So I'm hoping it'll do well. The disadvantage, for me, I've driven in the Bolt. I've several times, and I have friends who have them. There's no GPS. And when you need to find your charging stations, a built-in GPS that knows about charging stations is really right handy. The Leaf had that, and they have a cheaper thing where they use the GPS inside your phone. But it isn't just, if the GPS improves, and it's very limited. It's very limited. And the disadvantage of a Model 3 is it's not a hatchback. And so I have a friend, he has a Bolt, and he's getting a Model 3. He'll be all electric when the Model 3 arrives. And he wanted that mixture because he could have the hatchback in the Bolt. Originally he was going to get 2 Model 3s. And the big disadvantage for the Leaf is it had terrible battery capacity loss. And it's a sad tale. I have a whole graph on that. I don't have time for the sad tale. But we can talk about it in the questions. And it had very poor range prediction. And we asked Nissan hundreds of us asked Nissan to do what Tesla finally did. And Nissan never did. So just quickly over my own Tesla experience on that same trip, I got into national parks. So a friend of mine went coast to coast a couple of times in his Model S. What I've done is stopped at national parks. And there's very little charging in those parks. There is at the Ahwahnee Hotel, now called the Majestic, and they told me that they get 5 Teslas and volts per day there in the summertime. So the lodges should have it, but they don't. So all these different parks, and 78 superchargers, and they're going in faster than I can keep up. So these are the charts on the carbon footprint. I'm going to skip through them so we can get to the questions but I want to get back to them. So this is about your electric bill, and this is about the California carbon footprint, and this is about the national carbon footprint, and this is the wind power. And so this is my last slide of the main part of the talk. So for buying and leasing, if you're leasing, the dealer has the right to keep the federal credit for itself. Nissan didn't do that. Nissan made sure all their dealers passed through the $7,500 to reduce the cost of your lease. Other brands, it's hit or miss. Tom got the deal on his lease, and I've heard of other people getting the deal. But my friend who's on about his 3rd leased electric vehicle, he said he had to really negotiate hard to even get several thousand of that $7,500. The local dealer, when I went down to look at a RAV4 Toyota, they said, no way. Why would you lease? Because we keep it. So a good strategy is to buy a limited all-electric that will get you around town and keep the gas car for road trips if you're a two-car household. That's one strategy. Make sure you apply for your California state and Edison rebates, even if you lease. And another idea is to buy a used all-electric off-lease. And a lot of times, for the Leaf, they had troubles selling enough cars, so they lowered the lease payments and kept the residual value high. So the car came off lease, they could not sell it for that price. So you let it sit there for a few months, and you go in and you say, yeah, I'll give you something for your car. And then another strategy is to buy a used Leaf, it's heavily depleted battery, the dealer can't get rid of it, and then you just buy a new battery for it. And that's only $5,500 if you get the right dealer. When you're traveling, use Plugshare. Okay, that's the one thing I want everybody to remember. Use Plugshare to find everything about charging. And if the motel does not have charging, show them how you can get the destination charge. And I have a handout that gives that information. And just basically advocate for more charging at work, multifamily housing, motels, and museums. Okay, so that's the main part of the talk, and we'll open up to questions. And I'll stay up here because I can move around the charts depending on your question. Okay, go ahead.
And since we're videotaping this and we have a sound recording, if you have a question, please raise your hand. I'll bring the microphone to you. I'll be back to you in a moment.
Does the level 3 charger degrade the battery greatly?
That's a good question. With the Leaf, there was some speculation that it was. The Leaf has a measurement of the temperature of the battery, and the high temperatures were obviously bad on the battery. The people in the hottest climate lost capacity the fastest. There was no way to see that temperature in the normal displays, but my buddy hackers, it didn't take them long, and they hacked the car pretty well. They haven't been able to hack the Tesla. It's a tough nut. But they've hacked it a little bit, but I don't have that app. But anyway, the answer is after a level 3 charger on the Leaf, yes, the battery got hot. And that probably did contribute some to range loss, although it was hard. We tried to do a lot of statistics on that. We never were sure. With the Tesla, it has active cooling. That's another big advantage. I mean, every one of 7,000 cells has its own coolant loop. And so what happens, I go out to the desert, and it's 85 degrees or it's 90 degrees, and I've just been driving hard for an hour and a half, and I plug in, and it sounds like a wind tunnel. The cooling system goes into overdrive, and it's cool. It doesn't care about cooling the cabin, but it's cooling that battery. And so the battery does not get hot. And so there's been no range degradation in my car from supercharging at all. The other cars, I'm not sure. The Bolt has better cooling than the Leaf. I'm not sure exactly what. Okay, next question. Who's behind? Oh, yeah. Okay.
I just saw, I think in the LA Times, that the city of Beverly Hills is banning plug-in hybrids from their city charging stations.
Really?
Do you predict charging wars in the future?
So are these stations that don't have a meter on them?
I don't know.
The story didn't say?
No.
I mean, there's...
They're owned by the city, but I'm not sure if they're...
Oh, these were stations that were for the employees, for the city vehicles?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's the only way that would make sense. Now, Now, the quandary for someone putting in charging is that a level 2 without a meter is much cheaper than a level 2 with a meter. And I think the price for the charge points with the meter is outrageous. They charge $5,000 or $6,000 for a unit that has 2 hoses. And Claremont has that here behind City Hall and then down in the parking structure they have. And then Pomona College has 9 back there in the main structure on First Street. But the cost of those of a unit that doesn't have a meter is less than $1,000 versus $5,000 or $6,000. But the cost of installing electricity can be several $1,000s, and that would be the same. So it's frustrating. What should be happening is we should be advocating to planning commissions, and I just have not had a chance to come down. I've been meaning to come down to the planning commission here in Claremont. We're putting in housing all over town, multifamily housing, and there's no charging in there. If they would just, for a few $100s a unit, they could put in wiring so that a charger could be installed at the owner's expense or the renter's expense as necessary. But without the wiring in the walls, it's expensive. It really can't happen. And we renovated the mall, the little mini mall on Arrow and Indian Hill. No charging there. If they tore up they redid the parking lot, they could have put in the conduit for charging at a very nominal cost. No one thought of it. So I'm surprised about Beverly Hills. Okay, next question.
I found the article.
Ah.
It's for the City of Beverly Hills public parking lots, and it says that to provide adequate charging for 100% reliant electric vehicles, they have to stop letting the hybrid electric plug-in hybrids charge there.
Oh,
because
so
they don't have enough chargers.
Because they're too busy.
Yeah,
Okay.
because the Leaf is such a great car that tons of people are buying them. I think it's really unfair in the comparisons not to mention the difference in price
Sure.
between the Leaf and the Tesla.
Oh, it's huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. But the difference in price between the Bolt and the Leaf is not that much.
Right,
And-
that's a fair comparison. But I have a 2011 Leaf, and it just hasn't been a problem. I've found all kinds of places to charge, and frankly, it sort of keeps your brain young because you have to figure out, should I get off the freeway and drive slower so I have more charge? And it's really viable.
Great. And I have a friend, Alan, who has over 120,000 miles on his Leaf, and he's done the same thing. And he has engagements all over town as a professional musician, and so he'll finish a concert late at night, and he'll need a fast charge on the way home, and he's got it all worked out, and he's had all kinds of stories of things going wrong, but I started at the beginning about, you can step up to the plate to reduce to drive electric. You can spend a lot of money, and I know people for which the Tesla was a real stretch. They would never put that much money in a car for any car other than a Tesla. But Ben Allen didn't have that kind of money. He said, I will make it work with finding the public charging, and he did. Nora has another question. Okay.
Tom, regarding leasing, are leases typically 3-year leases, 2-year leases? And if I was looking to buy a car that was coming off lease, then could I look at 2015s now? Are they starting to show up on dealer lots?
A little early for 2015, I would think. But they probably, so typically 3-year leases. There were a couple of cars that for various reasons they had 2-year leases, but 3 years is much more common.
Do you think that there's a noticeable difference in the model 2013 Leaf versus the model 2014 Leaf, that kind of thing?
Well, let's see, I think if I go back, I said what I don't remember the exact, it'd be hard to get back to that chart, but there was a 24 kilowatt hour year, 2011, and then there was another year when it went up to 30. And then the latest jump to 8 to 40 kilowatt hours was made just last fall. So so yeah, maybe getting close to when that jump to the middle jump happened. And Nora has told me that when she got a new battery and she got it upgraded to the middle battery, to the 30. Other people were told that was impossible. So.
Nissan told me they had to put in the 2016 battery because they weren't making the other batteries.
Yeah.
And so they modified my car when they replaced the battery. But I have sort of more of a philosophical question, Tom, which is that the way that the Tesla has achieved this big range and a luxury feel, and I've been in your Tesla and I love it, is by putting this hunking huge battery in it that you have to have superchargers and use up a tremendous amount of electricity to propel the car. Whereas the Leaf, and perhaps the Bolt, is a lighter car with a smaller battery. And if you're looking at your footprint, comparing those two, how does the Tesla hold up to the smaller electric vehicles?
Okay, so a very good point. I said that the cars get about 3 miles per kilowatt hour. That's just an average. And the Model 3 and the Bolt will get closer to 4, and the Leaf even 5. There were times I was getting 5 miles per kilowatt hour in the Leaf if I was driving it really carefully. So that translates into lower carbon footprint, no doubt about it. And so the Bolt is probably a heavier car than the Leaf because it has a 60 kilowatt hour battery. But it's not the Model S is heavy. It has a heavy suspension. You can see great big wheels and all kinds of. When I was turned off by that too. I said I want to get rid of my gas car and I want to go on long trips. So I had to, and I'm retired. I don't have a daily commute, where a smaller car would have done fine. So. But so the Model 3 is the answer to that. The Tesla is it's a lighter car. I've driven the Model 3. I have 2 of my friends have them. It is a lighter car, and one friend, she drove it, and she said, and she drives a Model S, and she has a Model 3 on order, and she says, I like this car better because I'm used to a sportier car. I didn't like the Model S was too heavy for me. So I'm going to love this car. So there's good strengths on that.
Say a little bit about the Bolt, if I could.
Okay.
You have the.
Why don't you use his mic? Or
Use the microphone. I'm sorry.
EV batteries require rare earth elements like cadmium, which can be quite toxic. So at the front end, are we going to have resources available? Because right now they're mostly found in places like Congo, China. And then what about at the back end when it's time to dispose of these potentially very, very hazardous batteries?
Okay, so I'm going to have some charts I'm going to show in a minute on the carbon footprint. But for the toxicity question, I don't think your information is quite right. Yes, there's cobalt in the Congo as mined under bad conditions. The cadmium is not in the batteries at all. That's in the old NiCad batteries. That was bad stuff. The batteries are really, lithium is not toxic. The electrolyte is a fancy proprietary organic chemical that can degrade, and it's mildly toxic. But as far as the other parts of your question, the disposal, first of all, the batteries can be used after they've lost, say, 60% or say 40% of their capacity, and no one wants them in their car anymore. They can be put in your home, and they can buffer the power in your home. They can be many more years there. They are working on the recycling. There just isn't enough batteries to really scale up the recycling process. But they expect to do that. They expect to do that. And there's a lot of batteries from the power tool industry, that are coming, that get used up. So there are companies working on recycling the batteries. And there's a large supply of lithium. Right now it's coming from Argentina and Chile mainly, from the high altitude salt ponds. And Bolivia has a big deposit, and they're so afraid, they have a kind of a left-wing government. They're very afraid of being exploited because they've been exploited in the past. So they haven't really opened up their deposits yet, but there's a lot there. The one problem that's true is some of the batteries have a certain amount of, they don't have any rare earths. The rare earths is in the motor. And the Tesla motor has no rare earths in the Model S. I just learned that the Model 3 has gone back to the permanent magnet motor, so it does have some rare earths in it. And the rare earths are largely in China. There is a rare earth deposit near Death Valley that was used during World War II, but it's not enough. So, the motors can be done without using rare earths at all. So it's not a problem that should discourage you, in my opinion.
Tom mentioned that the Chevy Bolt does not have a GPS system as one of the disadvantages of it. I thought for those of you who might be tempted to get a Chevy Bolt, which I highly recommend, it's just a real pleasure to drive. It's so nice to drive past gas stations and never have to stop. But my first experience for driving more than a few miles in the Bolt was driving to Orange County to visit relatives of my wife and me. And I was interested in the fact that it wasn't fully charged, but going 55 miles, according to the map, it used about 30 miles worth of battery power. So there's a nice little display on the front telling you how many miles you have left. And so I clocked that and found that it used about 30 miles to go 55 miles. And of course, the reason was that we're going largely downhill into Orange County. So without a GPS system, you have to have a little something in your head telling you, yes, I'm going downhill and I better watch it because I have to go back uphill. So it used, sure enough, about 70 miles going back. Fortunately, I had about 30 miles left of the charge. But you do have to think about these things without the GPS. It's not that difficult. We live up in the hills near Padua, and going to downtown Claremont, I end up in downtown Claremont with about 10 miles more on my batteries than I had when I started. But then, of course, going back up, you could drive a block, and you've used another mile worth of gasoline, of power, electric power. So you end up with about a 5-mile net loss, just about what you would expect. But you have to sort of keep these calculations in your head without a GPS system. Anyway, that should not discourage you from getting that deficiency of the Bolt, as it were, should not discourage you from getting it, because I found it's a delight to drive.
Any questions back here? Let me make a comment on, no, I have one, oh my God. The Leaf has what we call the gasometer. And when you're going downhill, it says, okay, well, you're really cooking, babe. And so suddenly your mileage estimate goes way up. As soon as you start going uphill, it says, oh boy, you're just going to run out in another 100 yards. And the Bolt is better at not wildly changing those predictions like that. And so there's a rule of thumb, like you have to calibrate it for each car, but roughly about 7 miles you subtract for every 1,000 feet of elevation gain, and if you're going downhill, you add in maybe 6 miles. And that works for the Tesla, and you'd have to adjust it for the other cars. So you look up the elevation of you're going to have where you're going, and adjust accordingly. Okay, next question.
We've driven Volvos for years, and for one reason, because of safety. Could you say a little bit about the safety record of these various cars?
Okay, so the Model 3 is too new to have any record. I think the record for the Leaf is quite good. I don't know quite what the rating is. The Model S used to have the top rating, the absolute top rating on the safety, but there was a test last summer where it failed a new corner collision test, and they've made changes. It hasn't been tested again, but Tesla makes changes pretty fast when they have a problem. They had one problem where there was a car had a bad failure because it hit some road debris, and it tore out the underside of the battery. And the car said, okay, there's a problem, please, please pull over to the side and exit your vehicle. And there was plenty of time for the driver to get out before it caught fire. And the cars don't explode. Not like, gasoline has a certain probability of exploding. That doesn't happen with an electric car, but it does catch fire. So I have a friend who drives a Subaru, and they have a very high safety rating. And so she says, there's no way I'll touch a car until it has the same safety rating as the Subaru has. So Tesla just had a very bad crash up in Northern California, and I know exactly where it is. It's where my cousin, I'm going up there this week to visit my cousin. I'm flying up there. I'm going to rent a BMW i3. I've never done that before. And I'm going to be driving right across that point where that happened. And there was a horrible thing where they had a guard cement rail between two directions of traffic, and they'd had a previous crash, and they left this T-rail pointed right at traffic. And the clown driving was using his autopilot, and he wasn't looking out the window like he was supposed to, and he had 4 or 5 seconds to see that thing coming at him, and he didn't. But the problem is the car should have seen it coming and didn't. So, yeah, so the safety is not perfect. I want to get to the carbon footprint, so let's just take like 2 more questions and then do the carbon footprint.
This should be quick. I'm a new owner of a plug-in hybrid that hasn't been mentioned tonight. It's the Honda Clarity.
Oh, good. I didn't know that.
And I'm curious, is there danger like plugging the power cord into an extension cord so I can steal electricity from my brother, that kind of a thing?
No.
It's not dangerous?
That's not unsafe at all, as long as it's a grounded outlet. It won't even power up if it doesn't have a grounded outlet. If it's not good connection, it won't power up. And so do you get about, how big is the battery in that? It's about 10 kilowatt hours or less, 8?
It's hard to dig that information out.
I'll dig it up for you.
I think it might be 6.
Okay, that sounds about right. So that's about 20 miles. Oh, well then it's got to be bigger. If it can do 40, that's great. Okay, Nora?
You want to make sure that you have a really big extension cord, because otherwise you'll pull the power more slowly. I've stolen power from people if I was at their house for a party, But so I carry a big hunkin' yellow, you know,
Yeah, the 12 amp, yeah. The big-
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And just to briefly address safety, I think an important thing with the electric cars is they have those low batteries, and try as you will, it's really hard to roll them.
Yeah.
You know,
Good
so
point.
when you think about safety, you have to think about the various aspects.
Yeah, I should have put that on the chart. That's a very good point. Okay, let me get to the carbon footprints. So before I get to carbon,
Let's do one more question
okay,
and
one
then.
more. Sure.
So San Diego Union Tribune has an article March 16th that was on the research by an assistant professor at UC San Diego for recharging, for reclaiming and restoring batteries. The team has a way of I don't understand all this stuff, but it's a way of taking and reclaiming lithium ion and lithium cobalt batteries. And they're hoping to be able to scale it up. So
I think
something
I
new
might have
coming.
seen that article. That's too technical for us to, and I don't remember enough to address that. So I wanted to mention briefly when to charge. What's the best carbon footprint for when to charge? So this chart is the power. Well, first I want to. No, that's fine. This is the power for the whole state on a particular day, March 27th. And this time of year, there's not a lot of air conditioning. So they call this the duck curve because the dip there is the duck's back. The duck's head's over here, I guess. And the difference here between this line, which is what the fossil fuel is generating, all the power generators in the whole state. And the difference is the utility scale solar production. So the solar production, now the scale here, it starts at 8,000. So this isn't zero, it's 8,000. But there's still a big gap here. And so that's saying that, you know, this is the worst time to charge is 7 a.m. And, but you charge late at night, or you charge in the middle of the day. So more charging at work would be great. You just program them to charge in this period. And so then you're using the most solar and the least. This is fossil fuel all here. This is all natural gas in California. So that's interesting. Then you go to this chart. This is how it affects you personally. Now, Edison has been forced by the Utilities Commission to put everybody on a new scheme. Instead of tired electric rates, so you know something about it, you have to go, we're going to time of use. And I've been on time of use for about 8 years, but I have solar. But I can tell you, do not fear time of use. It's and especially that electric car, it's your friend. So see, this is a typical day in my house, okay? So I'm charging the car all night long. And at the green rate, well, the green rate is 13 cents. And then I'm running the meter backwards during the day at either this color, which is orange, or this is red here. So either off-peak or on-peak. So I get either 27 cents or 36 cents, except I get lower prices on the weekends. So even though over a year's basis, I consume more power than I produce with solar because I'm driving the car so much and charging mostly in my garage, I ended up with a $900 credit for the year. I didn't get that money in real money. It was erased. At the end of 12 months, they erased the credit. But that shows you can put in solar that doesn't match your total use. Most contractors say, oh, you have to put in enough solar to zero out your bill. Why do that? Just put in enough to get to where you zero out in dollars. And so this is great stuff. And so I told you before that I had a zero marginal cost. Well, it's at $900. Since I have $900, I can drive more. And it won't, instead of $900 of funny money that's erased, it'll only be $300 of funny money that's erased. Either way, it's zero. All right, so now get into the carbon footprint. So here's a carbon footprint for California. So for the electricity. So all this is the natural gas, this color here. And all these guys in the bottom are various kinds of generation that generate no carbon emissions, including nuclear, but solar, the biggest, hydro, still a big function. Wind is actually not that big for California. Now in Idaho, wind is over 30%. It's huge. In fact, I think they may be approaching 40%. No, not Idaho, Iowa. And so the mixture varies a lot by state, and we'll see that in the next chart. So there's also an electric vehicle, the footprint for manufacture. And there was a story in Forbes about a year ago saying that, it's all fake news. Electric cars are bad because the carbon footprint of making the car, making the battery, outweighs any savings you might get from driving it. Well, they were using a bunch of misleading assumptions. They were using the average for the whole country at that time, which was 50% coal. It's no longer 50% coal, it's like 30% coal. California has 0% coal, or maybe 1% coal. And also, they weren't counting the fact that you could have solar on your own house. And they were overestimating that premium for making the car. I did my own analysis about 2 years ago, and I came up that there is maybe a 30% penalty for making the car over a conventional car. Now, a Tesla will have a little higher penalty because the Model S has a lot of aluminum. Aluminum is expensive, takes a lot of electrical power, but you can get your aluminum made in Iceland with geothermal power. I've never heard that Elon is getting his aluminum from he would brag about it if he was, so he doesn't. And so the crossover, I came up with like 15,000 miles for the Leaf and 25,000 miles for the Tesla. And now the next chart is by states. So this gives you a little more. So here's the carbon intensity for electricity by U.S. state. And this information was 2012. I couldn't find anything more recent. And we have California over here. It isn't the best state, but it's like the 10th best. Vermont is 0 because I think they buy all their power from Quebec. And they have hydroelectric power. And if you had a state that was 100% on natural gas, I calculated it would be about here. So California is about half of that because they're about half natural gas. And if you're in these states up here, Wyoming, Kentucky, West Virginia, or Indiana, and down to North Dakota, the top two are still above 90%. Actually, these guys have actually improved a little bit. And so how does that compare to driving a gas car? Well, I did some calculations. I'm not sure they're all right, but it comes out if you had 30 miles per gallon car, you would come in about the same as the worst coal states. So an electric car would be a wash. It wouldn't be any worse than a gas car in the 2 or 3 worst states. But that's not adding some additional emissions for refining the gasoline and transporting it. And there's statements that there's 6 kilowatt hours associated with every gallon of gas. So that's enough to power the car. You can get your 30 miles with that 6 kilowatt hours. So, and now a Prius will do better. It's doing more than 30 miles per hour, but it has this other penalty. So some cars will be way above this, and so even in a coal state, it'd be better to drive electric. But I wouldn't advise buying an electric car if you were in those states. So does this make sense? Do you have any criticism of this chart?
Like they say, Tom, it only gets better for an electric car.
That's true. Yeah, and this chart is out of date. It's 2012. So we know California's improved quite a bit. Solar has really gone on strong. And the wind power on a lot of states has improved. Oklahoma is trying to catch up with Iowa as far as wind power. So So that's all pretty good. So I think I may be about at the end. Oh, no, I have one more chart. So this is the wind power chart. And this, unfortunately, I can't find a chart that shows both how much of this is being used. But this is the total wind power potential for the country. And you see it's in the Midwest, it's just fantastic. So these purple numbers are like 8.5. And we have offshore, we have a lot. Only the very first wind power offshore went in operation a year ago off of Rhode Island, I think, yeah. And only 5 turbines. But there's a lot of wind power offshore in Europe. And the reason it's not prevalent here yet is because in the Baltic they have a lot of shallow ocean, and they can route the towers on the seafloor. And here the continental shelf falls off too deeply. So there's various people working on floating ones, and there's a good, right around Morro Bay, there's a nice good wind resource there. And there's a retired coal plant there at Morro Bay, so the electric is already there. The transformers are sitting there idle. And so there's proposals to use that, and so that would be great. And then there's like the Great Lakes have good wind power. You put things in the wind. And so Wyoming up here, they're just burning coal. They're happy, you know, it's burn away. North Dakota, Montana isn't so bad. There's some wind power there. And there's a proposal to run a power line all the way down here, 750 miles, and it would cost $1 a watt to put the $3 billion for 3 gigawatts of power. And you can build solar systems in the desert for $1 a watt total. So that's pricey, but the wind power is perfectly timed. It peaks in the afternoon, California's afternoon. So it would be great. And so it's worth $1 an hour. So that project is moving forward slowly. And there's other, of course, they use high voltage DC to do that. And then there's several other power lines, one going this way that's being proposed. And there's one state, I forget, I think it's Arkansas. See, this is Oklahoma. No, it would be, this is Oklahoma. I don't know, one of these states where there's a couple of ranchers and they don't want their high voltage DC line going across their property. So they've killed the project. They have to go, they've got their state legislature to ban it, so they have power go all the way around the whole state. Well, I have been driven up 395 and there's a high voltage DC line that goes up there. And I'll bet I'm the only guy out of thousands that notices it. There's a conventional power line up there with 3 wires. And you know it's DC because there's only 2. And it crosses 395 a couple of times between here and Bishop. And next time you do that drive, look for that. And if it was more than 2 miles off the highway, no one would know it was there at all. So high voltage DC is, to me, is not a problem. Anyway, I think that's about all I got, other than the testimonials. Yeah, so let's see what I can say about the testimonials. Yeah, so Nora, who you've heard from, she's on this list. And
I have a 2011.
Okay, she's a 2011. I have all kinds of errors on here. And I said you had 70,000 miles.
Probably.
Yeah. And you do have a gas car you use when necessary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you do a lot of driving all over the area. And you use the electric car whenever you can. And you found some free level 3 charging. Now, Alan up here is the guy with 120,000 miles. And I already told you about him. Now, this guy is a friend of mine from my church. And he just got a Volt a year ago. Well, I guess a year and a half ago. And he has a new higher capacity one, and it was 55 miles, and his round trip commute is 42 miles. So no gas. Doesn't have to charge at work. This lady, let's see, this one, did I leave this out? Oh yeah, there's a testimony I leave out. A lady I met in this parking lot, And she has just a, I think a Toyota Prius Prime. It only has 25 miles, all electric, but she gets to charge at work because she works for the city, the downtown, Los Angeles City. And so she charges at both home and work, and she gets by without any. So she's done 800 miles with no gas. And in fact, the Volt has to be specially designed gas tank because so many people get so anal about using gas that the gas gets stale. So they have to design the tank to not allow the gas to get stale. Here's a couple with limited budget, and they both have Leafs, and they have a short commute. So they're saving money with no gas, and they're keeping their cars for a long time because they're not doing a lot of mileage on them. So they're saving money. Here's a guy, very first Model 3 came off the assembly line for non-employees. One of the very first. He got it because he was first in line, and immediately went into a 48-state road trip. And he would post, okay, I'm going to be at Santa Ana, California at 1 a.m. And so my friend Phil was out there at 1 a.m. because he had a Model 3 on order, and that was the only way he could see one was to be there at 1 a.m. And this is my friend Phil. He's gone the whole route. He likes to lease cars, so he leased a Leaf. Then he leased a BMW i3. He bought the Bolt, and he has a Model 3 on delivery expected very soon. And then he'll be 100% electric. And so, here's Sparky, the guy I might have mentioned, that he drove to Maine and back before the Supercharger network was fully installed. And he has teenage daughters, and he said, in every case, when I stopped for charging, the girls had to go off, and in all cases, the car was done before they were. Okay, so that's all I've got. I've got some handouts, and I think I brought about enough for everybody. And what I have on this handout is the references for some of this stuff. In big letters, I have Plugshare, and then where you get all the rebates, and then a list of the top 20 cars by sales for 2017. And then a couple things like how to get a hold of me. And then if you want to be really kind, there's and you know someone who's going to get a Model S, just give them my little referral code here. And then they save $1,000 off the car, and they get free charging for life for that car, not with the Model 3, but for the big car. And I get a little goodie. I don't get money anymore because that was illegal, so they had to stop that. Okay.
And Tom, if there's a question or two more, would you be willing?
Yeah, go back to question.
Please wait to the microphone.
I was just wanting to know if you fly someplace and want to rent a car, do you have that on there on the information so you can...
I think the name is Turo, Turo. .com. And they have an app, and so I've communicated with the guy I'm going to rent from for San Jose. And so the question is, how do I get the car at the airport? And the way it's going to happen is he's going to be at work, but his wife is going to take the train, and is going to drive the car to the airport, and then give me the keys, and then I will take her to the train station. So we'll see how that works.
How long can you expect a battery to last, either in years or in miles?
Very good question. Very good question. The Tesla is rated for 8 years, unlimited mileage. The Leaf, the battery the first battery didn't last so long. Now, Nora has the improved battery, and it should last better, but Alan has seen some loss in it too. So I would say maybe with the improved Leaf battery, it might go 8 years. What do you say, Nora?
Well, it's just like how many miles do you get? It's a complicated question. I mean, I also have a 2003 Prius with the same batteries. And that's because a friend of mine early on told me park in the shade. You know, like heat is bad. So if you take care of your battery, and with the Leaf, it gives you these little red bars for how hot it is. I once did 3 level 3 charges in one day and came to the conclusion that level 3 is like heroin. You know, like once you start using it, you just want to do it all the time. But it's really bad for your battery.
Yeah, 3 a day is not.
Yeah, no, and you shouldn't park on a black surface in the sun. And you shouldn't, there's still debate, is it worse to leave it full or is it worse to leave it empty?
Yeah, the halfway full is the best.
Yeah, so it's like anything else. If you take care of it, it'll last longer.
Yeah, there's a lot there in what you said. I can't remember what I was going to say.
Or at least not worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah, but the keeping, I know one thing is Nissan, when you do go in for service, they can download a record of how many times you quick charged it. And they give you a report card, say you got a B- for the amount of fast charges you did.
You know, Nissan, there was an article today in the stuff I keep sending you from Green Car, whatever, that said that Nissan is starting to rebuild batteries and they're going to sell, rehabbed batteries for the Leaf.
That'd be good.
Right now they're only in Japan.
Yeah.
Anything else? Couple of questions back here.
I tend to keep my gasoline cars for as long as I can.
Until it dies. Yeah, unfortunately, that's not very good anymore.
Yeah.
But I have, this guy's the same way. He didn't replace his car until he had to.
Uses a bicycle.
Yeah, I know. That's good.
So what do you plan to do with your Teslas?
Well, I just learned, so my friend Sparky, he just had to sell his Model S to get a Model X. And he used Vroom, V-R-O-O-M. And so he called Tesla and said, well, what will you give me? And they said, well, we'll give you the same as CarMax. So then he calls CarMax, and he got a price of about $36,000, something like that, for a Model S with 70,000 miles, which is, I have 75,000 miles in mine. And so then he went to Vroom, and what they do is they don't have any storefront, they don't have anything. They tell you precisely what pictures to take, and they look up your VIN number, and they send you an offer. And you have 48 hours to decide, and you say yes. And this guy pulls up in a truck, and he has a clipboard, and he walks around the car, and he checks off boxes on the clipboard, and he takes a picture of your signature, and he takes your car, and then they wire you the money. And it was like $4,000 more than what CarMax was offering. And he had a extended warranty, which I also have, but then there was still 20,000 miles left on extended warranty. Tesla doesn't honor that when it's sold to a dealer, but Tesla gave him his prorated money back on the extended warranty. So he got another couple $1,000s back from Tesla. So that's and the cars, if you go to the Tesla website, they have a used car section. They do sell their own cars. But the cars don't last. So you can't find the car you want on the website. But what you do is you call up your buddies at Buena Park Tesla showroom. And they are also the headquarters for the certified pre-owned. So they're getting all kinds of Teslas coming in for everybody wants the latest and greatest, so there's a lot of turnover. And so you just tell them, I want a red one that has the advanced suspension and the moonroof and the blah blah and the fancy music, and they will just wait until that car comes in, and then there's several weeks before they can put that car on the website. And you put in a $500, they'll call you and you have 2 days to put down a deposit on that car, and then it never gets on the website. And I know a guy who bought his car from them, and it had too many miles for them to CPO it, and they told him, I was there, they told him, you understand you're not getting any warranty at all other than the 8-year powertrain warranty. And he said, yeah, I understand. Signed it, took car home, immediately had a problem. The roof leaked. The seal didn't leak because it had the glass roof. And so he called up a different Tesla showroom, and they said, oh, what's your VIN number? And he told them, and they said, oh, well, your fairy godmother just put a $50,000 warranty on that car. Bring it on down. So somebody at Tesla had a second opinion and decided that this guy took this car off their hands, and they were going to give him a warranty.
Wow. What did you pay for the car?
He paid about, I think it was $42,000. Yeah.
It's 8:30, so maybe we'll take 2 more questions.
This question has to do with your TOU schedule you posted earlier, and stop me if I missed this
time
because
of
I
use,
came
okay, the
I
time
came
of
in
use
late.
schedule.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you want to go back to the chart?
Sure. So, did you address, or are you addressing the planned shift in the TOU schedules to later in the afternoon?
Yeah, I talked about that.
Okay, great.
So
Thank you for
did
stopping.
Everybody else heard that, right?
No, I came in late. That's why I want to ask.
okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So let me just one more comment about that. So I know people that are delaying getting an electric car until they get solar because they know the electric car will kick them into a higher tier. You can get a TOU tariff that has no tiers. You can use it, the price stays the same no matter how much power you use. And so, but the price changes by time of day. So as long as you charge your car at the off-peak price, you'll make out fine. And so you don't really, it's not essential to wait for solar. Solar will help. So yeah, don't fear the time of use. But there's going to be, I predict there's going to be a hue and cry. They've only, Karen here has been put on the first wave of time of use. And she has solar, she has no electric car. And they predicted, they gave her 3 choices, and one choice was going to cost her so much for a whole year, and another choice was going to cost her $500, and one cost, so she went with the lowest priced one. We'll see whether it's really, but they claim to have actually analyzed her actual usage for the whole year, and she had solar for the whole year. So it should be accurate. So, but there'll be a hue and cry from people who don't have solar, and they say, what's going on here? I haven't seen any paper. Have you seen articles in the paper about it?
But yeah, well, I'm in the industry, so that's why I know that.
Oh, you're in the industry, okay.
Yeah, there definitely are. There's 2 sides to it, right? Because now what's going to happen is you're going to have lower rates during the time that you used to have higher rates. So for some people, it could be a very big benefit.
Right, yeah.
For example.
And the solar, the windows of when they turn on the high price are going to be less favorable. So eventually they're going to only start the high price at 4 in the afternoon when the sun's almost down. Right now it's at 2 in the afternoon, so I still see those red bars right here. These guys right here is at 2 o'clock. I'm still getting the highest price. But before long, the highest price will start at 4.
The other thing you want to do is very carefully look at those rate schedules, how they're calculating them, because when they're advertising it right now, they're saying that the rates are almost equal to tier. However, they're getting there because they're giving you a credit to get you back to it. But if you eliminated that credit, it's almost 40% higher.
Really?
So you don't know how long that credit's gonna last either, so it's, you gotta keep your eyes on.
Yeah, okay.
Just to fill in your chart, I've got a limited range Kia Soul
Yeah.
outside, which is they call it a crossover, so it's almost like an SUV.
Oh, cool.
And it's got a 27 kilowatt hour battery.
Wow.
The EPA range is like 93 miles. The computer
Wow.
says it's 105 when I've got it charged. And this is a 2016. And
What's the model number? Name? Model?
Soul EV,
Oh, it's a
Kia Soul.
I've seen the Kia Soul.
I bought it for 34 and got 10 grand back on the rebates.
Yeah, down to 24.
And I'm very happy with it so far.
Cool. Thank you.
So.
Yeah, it's new.
If you want one, it's right out in front if you want to look at it.
Yeah, I'd like to look at it.
Let's all go for a ride.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Tom Blakeney
Okay.
and Tom Hellaway.
All right.